Hello and welcome. I'm Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UAP, UFO news from everywhere and anywhere. So many of you might know that Ross Coldhart interviewed Jake Barber, the whistleblower, for 3 hours this past week. It was a follow-up to his first interview on January the 18th that was much shorter. It was about 45 minutes, but it did include a very revealing crash retrieval of an extraterrestrial vehicle. This, however, was a big letdown. It was taken in night vision. It was very grainy, and there was a lot of criticism on social media about that video clip of the crash retrieval. Case in point, Coquita Dorney at Coca-Cola Dorney said, "If you don't mind me asking, given that you have access to all those UAP, why were we shown an unconvincing video in night vision instead of a proper, good quality video of a craft?" And that's a legitimate question. Jake Barber himself chose to respond, and his response was, "Great question. There are a couple of reasons. One, we will be sharing those," and I guess he's referring to the high quality videos. And two, we're giving this new leadership a chance to review it since it may contain national security data. Okay. So as promised, Jake Barber and his team did come out with a video on his adventures with his Skywatcher team, and it's called Skywatcher Episode 1, The Journey Begins. I'd like to review that first episode of the Skywatcher team because there were some significant things said and some things happened that were of note. Okay, so Skywatcher's first episode is actually narrated by somebody called Alex Klokas. And Alex says that he's an investor and he's, I guess, best known for being at the SALT conference this past year.
Klokas. I'm an entrepreneur and investor at SALT.
Okay, so that's the narrator. His name is Alex Klokas, some sort of an investor, and he's going to talk about some people that are corroborating the belief in extraterrestrial life. He starts out with the scientist or immunologist Gary Nolan.
Years ago, I brought Dr. Gary Nolan, who's a tenured Stanford professor, to SALT. And I asked him, if you had to assign a probability to that statement, what probability would you assign?
100%.
And that idea that a prestigious, world-recognized scientist would make a statement that he is 100% confident blew my mind.
Okay, so he's using experts to corroborate his belief or the belief that extraterrestrial life has been visiting Earth. He goes on with the famous Carl Nell, who famously said that he had zero doubt last year at the SALT conference that there is extraterrestrial life visiting us. Here he is now.
Carl's had a decorated career leading our military at the highest levels, and he certainly did not mince words.
Non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing.
How confident are you that that is true?
There's zero doubt.
Okay, there it is. He says there's zero doubt. I'd like to move ahead a little bit on this. All right. So here, Klokas says that the testimony of Nolan and Nell are tremendous, but be that as it may, they're still secondhand sources. And he leads us into the presentation of Jake Barber, which we'll go into in just a second.
If their statements are true, it completely defies our current understanding of reality. The problem, however, is that both Dr. Nolan and Colonel Nell, they're kind of secondhand sources. And so we continued to push further. And ultimately, we found those primary sources. We found folks that are actually on the crash recovery team. They have been around, they have held, and they have transported supposed craft.
Okay, that's Jake Barber there now. And I'm going to move ahead a little bit here where he puts the same question to Jake Barber about his certainty about there being extraterrestrial life here on Earth.
So, Jake, do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has been visiting this planet?
Well, yes, I do.
And when you make that claim, Jake, how confident are you that claim is true?
I'm 100% confident that that claim is true.
Okay, so as you can see, he's building a case for the fact that extraterrestrials, or NHI, have been visiting the Earth by going to experts like Gary Nolan, Colonel Carl Nell, and now the whistleblower ex-Green Beret crash retrieval expert, Jake Barber. I'd like to move ahead where Jake actually says that there's an effort to reverse engineer these craft.
So there's a certain effort to reverse engineer these craft. That effort very quickly led to the idea that the power plant for these systems and the interface to manipulate that power plant wasn't done through a mechanical interface of levers of phalanges in order to manipulate control systems. It was done through the mind.
Okay, so he's referring to psionics, spelled Psionics, and that's mind control. He believes, or he has a team working with him that can actually communicate with UAP, and he claims that they can actually control the craft and bring them down. I'm going to move ahead here where an actual psionic asset, or someone that does this psionic interface with the craft, is interviewed. His name is Jordan Jozak.
Jordan, I really appreciate you joining us here today.
Alex, it's an honor to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
So maybe let's start by sharing a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So most recently, I worked in the space technology space, a little bit of data science, ultimately taking different imagery types and trying to solve solutions for the utility industry.
I'm curious, by chance, do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet?
I'm certain of that.
You're certain? How certain are you?
100%.
Okay, again, he's corroborating the idea that extraterrestrial craft are here or are visiting the Earth.
And Jordan, that's a pretty bold statement. Where does that certainty come from?
Certainty comes from my firsthand experience in what I term a psionic exploitation program between the years of 2005 and 2010, where I interfaced and worked with non-human intelligence and things like UAP directly.
Okay, so he's saying that he's a first-hand experiencer that worked with UAP directly. That's mind-blowing. Okay, further on down the interview, Alex Klokis puts the question to Jordan, do you have material that supports these claims?
Do you have material that supports these claims?
I have tons of material, linearly autobiographical records that will support my claims.
Yeah, maybe he should publish some of those claims. I'd love to see what's written about his direct contact with UAP. So Alex Klokis gets a one-on-one interview with Jake Barber himself, the leader of this crash retrieval team, or the Skywatcher team, I should say. And he says some pretty significant stuff about, they start philosophizing about these revelations and how incredible they are.
Seem to be able to interface with these craft. And there are organizations or institutions, if you will, all around the world that know this fact.
Yeah. Isn't it depressing that should be shocking?
It is very depressing, yeah.
That shouldn't be shocking. Thank God, you know what? I mean, forgive me, but I'm over that.
Yeah.
So, let's get past that, because that is the case, and it is exciting, but we have a duty here. We have a moment in time, thanks to friends like David Grush, who has stuck his neck out and paved a trail with our government, who, for better or worse, has control over a lot of things. This is...
He's right. I agree with him. This is a pivotal moment, and we have to thank David Grush for putting his reputation on the line and his life on the line for paving the way. I'm going to move up to where Jake talks about the fact that this is not limited to just the United States. It's actually worldwide.
I can tell you that this is not unique to the United States, and it's not unique to the the most well-known private partners of the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. There is a global effort and interest in this and a global capability in doing this. Crash recovery is something, and reverse engineering is something that is being done by a number of agencies or organizations worldwide. And
There it is. He's saying that the crash retrieval is being done not only here in the United States, but it's being done worldwide. And I believe he backs that up by saying that his very same company, Skywatcher, has been employed overseas as well.
I know that because my team has been sought after and offered jobs to go perform our services for employers outside the United States. Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to move up now because those are incredible statements, incredible claims. And Alex Klokas, the narrator or the interviewer, finally puts it to Jake Barber. He wants him to more or less prove it. So they put a team together and they go out into the desert. There's about 15 of them that go out into the desert. And there's a number of his teammates that go along with Gary Nolan, the immunologist, is there as well. He's there for scientific verification, I guess.
Sensor and data team, an operations team, a psionics team, and a scientific team led by Dr. Gary Nolan. And we are here to see what happens. We are going to spend 3 days together leveraging the psionics team, seeing if we can actually make something appear in the sky, seeing if we can track it, seeing if we can actually gather data and verify these supposed claims.
Okay, so there you have it. They actually went out into the desert and they filmed an episode where they were actually trying to prove this allegation that they can use psionics to contact these UAP. Gonna just go over very quickly some of the team members here. Fred Baker is a former U.S. Air Force member, and he specialized in warfare or special warfare. And he actually was interviewed individually on News Nation on his own and talked about his personal experiences that he had on his own. But probably one of the more interesting individuals is an individual who claims that he can do psionics. He's a psionic asset, and his name is Michael Batista.
I'm 32 years old, and I'm a former U.S. Army Green Beret, 3rd Group.
And Mike, do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has been visiting this planet?
Yes, I do.
When you make that statement, how confident are you that is true?
I'm extremely confident.
Do you feel like you believe that is true, or do you feel like you know that is true?
I know that it's true.
When did your experience with the phenomena begin?
The first experiences I was having was in my early teens, and it started to accelerate as I grew up. And as my time in the military was ending and I was getting out, it really accelerated at that point.
And when this happens, can you explain how it usually manifests or how you experience it?
It usually manifests as something anomalous in the sky, orbs, crafts, different pyramid-looking objects moving at extreme rates of speed and doing very angular movements.
When you do this, are there other people around? Do they actually see you doing this?
I have multiple witnesses that can testify that that is a fact.
And how many times do you feel like you've been able to summon something in the sky?
Anytime I want.
There you go. So Michael Batista is extremely confident there. In his own words, he claims that he can summon UAP anytime he wants. Okay, so while they were out there, all 15 of the members of that team saw unusual lights in the sky. But on the last day, a psionic asset claimed to be connecting with something. And their sensor data caught this.
Appear. Oftentimes, multiple lights would seem to appear at once. They would frequently move in patterns or angles that, at least to me, seemed unusual for a plane, satellite, meteor, or space debris. But I am no expert. On the last day, however, one thing did happen.
We had a couple of our folks that felt like it was a good time to try to communicate with potentially a craft or an entity that was out there through the methods that they use. You know, I just took a spot up on the roof to be able to observe what's out and around us, and then also have another set of eyes that are up above us. So got on the roof to say, you know, I'll be up here, had my phone, you know, let's be ready to record if something went down, and it did.
The psionic team claimed to be connecting with an object, and our sensor data caught this. While this was happening, Fred went up to see.
Okay, can you guys see that? It's very reminiscent of that white egg that was shown in the first News Nation video.
So I can hear them talking through certain things, and then he said something like, it's forming. As soon as he said that, I stepped out to look behind me, and that's when I saw whatever it was.
Suddenly, Fred saw a second object appear above our base camp.
It was all.
Okay, now there's no footage of this second object that Fred Baker, remember, he went up to the roof of where they were to get a better look, and he didn't see the egg-shaped object. He saw what looks like, to me, this looks like a disc, and this is an artist's rendering. And suspiciously, there's no video footage of this second object.
All gray, matte, like not shiny at all. It was elongated oval, where it looked like there was, you know, the opposite of a seam bursting out in the middle, going all the way around, and so it looked like a rim, because the bottom half of it was extremely dark. It made absolutely no sound, which doesn't make sense because of its proximity. Like, if it was small, if it was something maybe the size of this razor, then it was really close. We were talking 500-600 feet. If it was larger, which I kind of believe that's what it was, you're looking at 5 to 8 meters long, then probably around 1,500, 2,000 feet altitude, moving north to south. You know, it looked sturdy, it looked heavy. Wasn't a bird. You know, if it were an aircraft, any kind of conventional thing that we have now, it would have rocked us at how low it was. So
okay, so he seemed to be the only one that saw that disc-shaped object, from what I know. Later on in the interview, Gary Nolan, remember, he's there to scientifically verify what's going on there, make sure everything's on the up and up scientifically. And he didn't seem to have seen anything himself in the sky, that is.
Dr. Nolan was there, and this was his perspective.
I personally didn't see anything in the sky or on the ground, but what I did see was an individual who, in the midst of attempting to call such an object, exactly at the moment that he said he was interacting with something, the individual on the roof who had the cameras saw something. When we reviewed what it was that the person on the roof had seen, something showed up. I mean, it was fleeting, but it was clearly not a bug.
Okay, so there, Dr. Gary Nolan is admitting that he, for one, didn't see anything in the sky. What he did see was the team's reaction. He said the psionic asset himself, person doing the interface, seemed to be in distress, and at that very moment, something is seen by the others. So he himself didn't see it. Okay, so here's an explanation by the narrator as to what was seen in the sky. Apparently, the egg-shaped object was going in one direction, and the disc-like craft that Fred Baker saw was going in another direction.
So we have an egg-shaped object that our sensors caught moving in one direction, supposedly connected to our psionics team, and a disc-shaped object that Fred reportedly saw moving in a different direction. We worked with an animator to specifically visualize the disc that Fred saw. This is a recreation from his vantage point. For reference, this is what he believes the disc looked like. And this is the speed we calculated the disk was moving over the building. Our experience raises a lot of questions that we don't yet have the answer to.
Okay, so that's really the only discrepancy that I saw in that first episode. The sighting of the first egg that Gary Nolan didn't see, and then the fact that only Fred Baker saw the second disc-shaped craft. Other than that, they seem to have conducted themselves in a very scientific way. I'd like to finish up the episode. Here's Gary Nolan explaining what his function was in this whole project.
I was there not to provide any conclusions. I was there to make sure that everything that was being done in a scientifically accurate way, as dispassionately as possible, and to be part of the advisor team to make sure that this was done in a way that at some point, if it ever wanted to be put together into a scientific paper, we had collected the kind of metadata required.
Okay, there you go. So that provides some authenticity to this whole episode, the fact that they had a scientist there making sure that everything was on the up and up. Okay, so on the last day when they were wrapping up, something significant happened that actually caused the FAA to issue a temporary flight restriction.
Something incredible happened. There was a mass UAP sighting directly in the area where we ran our operation. There were dozens of claims on neighborhood apps of residents seeing anomalous things in the sky. The story picked up steam, and in a few days there were thousands of tweets about the incident. The FAA even imposed a temporary flight restriction over the area where we ran our operation. Is this causation?
So was it causation? Did Jake Barber's Skywatcher team cause that mass sighting? It's a possibility. It's just strange that it happened on the last day. It's sort of a cliffhanger. I do think that credibility was lent to the whole Skywatcher team when they reveal that the company is not media funded. It's, in their own words, an initiative to validate or invalidate UAP claims. They also invite the public to join in and try what they're doing, I guess, if you happen to have that equipment. And they also said that they would be sharing whatever findings they have in the future. So I'm sure this will be continued, and there'll be more episodes. I think one of the best reaction comments was posted on social media. I found this on the subreddit UFO Economy Annie 1213, and it's titled, "Don't be discouraged." I see a lot of people clowning on Skywatcher right now. Well, they never claimed there would be irrefutable evidence in this first video. And that's true. This was an introduction. The company was just recently started. Yeah, you got to give them a chance. Listen, if retrieving physical evidence of UFOs was so easy, even with the right people, everybody would have their own alien spaceship by now. I thought that was clever. And the post ends by saying, give them a effing chance, but remain skeptical. Barber said they would likely have the evidence within 12 months. If 12 months goes by and still nothing, then you can get on your high horse. Okay, that's true. On the extended 3-hour video, that was a follow-up to the first video where the actual UAP retrieval was shown. Jake Barber did say that everything would be revealed within the next 12 months. So we'll see. My name is Al Barrows, and this has been UFO Disclosure. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks. Thanks for listening to my podcast.